I was cut off at 18 and told I was a liability. My brothers were called investments. This is one of those revenge stories where entitlement collapses and family betrayal finally gets its bill. My father always told me I wasn't worth the tuition money, handing it to my brothers instead so they could waste it on parties. But looking at them now, trembling in my office as I hold the foreclosure papers to their bankrupt empire, I realized their entitlement was the best investment I never received. The silence in the executive suite of Sterling and Vance is usually the kind that costs $1,000 a minute. It's the silence of major mergers, of hostile takeovers, of the global economy shifting on a dime. But today, the silence is personal. It smells like fear, stale cologne, and the crushing weight of reality finally hitting two men who have lived their entire lives in a fantasy world. My name is Gianna James. To the financial world, I am the CEO of the most aggressive, successful investment bank on the East Coast. To the two men sitting across from me, Julian and Marcus, I am just the invisible little sister they forgot existed the moment they got their licenses. I'm sitting in a high-backed leather chair that faces the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. My back is to them. I wanted them to wait. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to stare at the back of the chair and wonder who this mysterious director of distressed assets was, who held their fate in her hands. They don't know it's me. Not yet. To understand why I'm about to ruin their lives with the stroke of a pen, you have to understand the James family dynamic, or rather, the lack of one. Growing up, our house in Connecticut was a shrine to my brothers. Julian was the oldest, the heir apparent. Marcus was the middle child, the golden athlete. And then there was me, Gianna, the accident, the girl. My father, Robert James, was a man who believed that women were decorative at best and expensive burdens at worst. He was a mid-level executive who thought he was a tycoon. He preached the gospel of legacy, and in his mind, legacy was carried by sons. I remember the dinner table conversations vividly. Dad would ask Julian about his debate club, beaming with pride when Julian gave a half-hearted, arrogant answer. He would ask Marcus about football, clapping him on the back. Then silence. He wouldn't even look at my end of the table. If I got an A, it was because the class was easy. If Julian got a C, it was because the teacher was jealous of his potential. The defining moment, the moment that killed the daughter and birthed the CEO, happened the spring of my senior year of high school. I had gotten into UPenn. It was my dream. I had worked myself into the ground, taking AP classes, editing the school paper, doing everything right. I brought the acceptance letter to the dinner table. I was shaking with excitement. I placed it next to Dad's scotch glass. He looked at it. He didn't open it. He just slid it back toward me. I remember asking him if he was proud. I remember the look on his face. Boredom. He told me, clearly and without emotion, that there was no money for me. He said the college fund had been split 2 ways, not 3. Julian was at Yale, struggling to keep a 2.0 GPA, but rushing the best fraternity. Marcus was heading to Princeton in the fall on a legacy admission that cost Dad a significant donation. I asked him why. I begged him. I told him I'd work. I just needed help with the tuition. He looked me in the eye and said the words that have burned in my chest for 15 years. He said, "Gianna, you aren't an investment. You're a liability. You'll just get married, change your name, and stay home. Why would I pour good money into a degree you'll never use? Your brothers are the future. You are just here." He cut me off. He literally cut me off financially that night. He told me that since I was 18, I could figure it out. I packed a bag that night. My mother stood in the doorway, wringing her hands, whispering that I shouldn't upset my father, that maybe I could take a secretarial course at the community college. She slipped me $100, the only support I ever got, and I walked out. I didn't go to UPenn. I couldn't afford it. Instead, I went to war. The next 10 years were a blur of exhaustion. I worked the graveyard shift at a diner to pay rent on a studio apartment that had cockroaches the size of my fist. I took classes at the community college during the day. I slept 4 hours a night. I remember seeing photos of Julian and Marcus on Facebook. Spring break in Cabo, ski trips in Aspen. They were wearing designer clothes, driving cars Dad bought them, surrounded by girls, looking like they owned the world. They were failing classes, getting into bar fights that Dad paid to hush up, and coasting. They were networking, Dad called it. I was scrubbing grease off a griddle at 3 a.m., reciting economic theory to keep myself awake. I transferred to a state university. I clawed my way into the honors program. I didn't have a social life. I didn't have parties. I had rage. Rage is a powerful fuel. It burns cleaner than ambition. I wanted to be so rich that I could buy my father's respect and then burn it in front of him. I graduated top of my class, summa cum laude. But in finance, pedigree matters. The big banks wanted Ivy League. They wanted the Julians and the Marcuses. I applied to 200 firms. I got one interview at a boutique firm that dealt with high-risk portfolios, basically the garbage that no one else wanted to touch. I took it. I was the first one in the office at 5 a.m. and the last one to leave at midnight. I ate vending machine crackers for lunch. I listened. I learned. I watched how the powerful men moved, how they spoke. I learned that money doesn't care about gender. It only cares about growth. My big break came 5 years in. I predicted the collapse of a tech bubble that everyone else was buying into. My boss laughed at me. I put my entire year's bonus on a short position against the market. 2 weeks later, the market crashed. The firm lost millions. I made millions. Suddenly, people knew the name Gianna James. I moved to Sterling and Vance. I moved up the ladder, not by stepping on rungs, but by building my own elevator. I was ruthless. I had to be. I became known as the shark because if there was blood in the water, I didn't just find it, I finished it. Meanwhile, my brothers had graduated. Dad, in his infinite wisdom, decided to liquidate a massive portion of his retirement and mortgage the family home to fund their vision. They started a luxury fashion label called J&M Heritage. It was a joke. It was generic, overpriced streetwear that relied on influencer marketing and hype. But because Dad poured millions into it, it looked successful for a while. They had a flagship store in Soho, they had runway shows, they were interviewed in magazines as the new kings of New York. I watched from a distance. I saw the financials because I make it my business to know everything. They were bleeding cash. Their overhead was insane. They were flying private jets to source fabric in Italy that they could have bought in New Jersey. They were expensing 5-star dinners and client entertainment that was really just partying. They weren't businessmen. They were children playing dress-up with daddy's wallet. But the economy is a cruel mistress. Interest rates hiked, consumer spending on luxury goods plummeted, and suddenly the kings of New York were naked. They took out loans, massive, predatory loans. They maxed out credit lines. And who did they eventually turn to when the traditional banks cut them off? Sterling and Vance, specifically the Distressed Assets Division, my division. They didn't know I was the CEO. I had kept my life very private. I use my middle name professionally sometimes, or just G. James on emails. To them, I was just the estrangement they never talked about. When their file crossed my desk 3 weeks ago, I actually laughed out loud. It was a disaster. They were millions in debt. Their assets were leveraged to the hilt. The only collateral they had left was the intellectual property of the brand and the family home in Connecticut. Dad had signed as a guarantor. If they defaulted, the bank took everything, including the house I grew up in, including the room where Dad told me I wasn't worth the investment. I told my assistant to schedule the meeting. I told her to bring them to the top floor. And that brings us to now. I hear Julian clear his throat behind me. "Excuse me," he says, his voice trembling with a mix of arrogance and anxiety. "We've been waiting 20 minutes. Do you know who we are? We have a meeting with the director." "Yeah," Marcus adds. We're the founders of J&M Heritage. We're very busy men. We need to get this refinancing signed so we can make our manufacturing deadline. I spin the chair around. The look on their faces is something I will cherish until the day I die. It takes them a second. They see a woman in a tailored Armani suit, hair slicked back, diamonds on her wrist that cost more than their cars. They see the power, and then they see the eyes. Gianna? Julian whispers. His jaw actually drops. Marcus just stares, blinking rapidly. What? Are you the assistant? What are you doing here? Get us some water. Old habits die hard. I don't smile. I don't stand up. I just lean forward and lace my fingers together on the mahogany desk. I'm not the assistant, Marcus, I say, my voice calm and icy. I'm the CEO of Sterling & Vance, and I'm the one holding the axe above your necks. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. You're the CEO? Julian stammers. But Dad said you were working at a library or something. Dad says a lot of things, I reply. Most of them are wrong, just like his assessment of your business acumen. I pick up the file in front of me. Let's review, shall we? You received a $5 million seed investment from our father. Gone. You took out a $3 million business loan from Chase. Defaulted. You have outstanding vendor debts in Italy, France, and China, totaling another $2 million. And you currently have $12.50 in your corporate operating account. I look up at them. You're not businessmen, you're arsonists, and you just burned down our father's retirement. Now listen here, Gianna, Marcus starts, trying to summon that bullying tone he used when we were kids. He stands up, leaning over the desk. You can't talk to us like that. We're your brothers. We're family. This is just a rough patch. We just need a bridge loan. $5 million. We'll pay it back in 6 months when the new line drops. I laugh. It's a cold, sharp sound. Sit down, Marcus, before I have security drag you out. He hesitates, looks at the security camera blinking in the corner, and sits. There is no new line, I tell them. I've seen your projections. They're fantasies. You're projecting growth in a recession with a brand that has lost its cool factor. Your inventory is sitting in warehouses rotting because you refuse to discount it. It's a luxury brand, Julian argues. We don't do sales. You don't do sales, period, I correct him. That's why you're broke. Julian runs a hand through his hair. He looks sickly. Gianna, please, you have to help us. If we don't get this money by Friday, the creditors trigger the liquidation clause. We lose the brand. I know, I say. I'm the creditor. They freeze. Sterling & Vance bought your debt from the other banks last week, I explain, enjoying every syllable. I own you. Every stitch of clothing, every trademark, and the house in Connecticut. You wouldn't, Marcus whispers. Mom and Dad live there. I'm aware, I say. And Dad signed the guarantee. He bet the house on you two. He bet that his investments, his golden sons, would pay off. He was wrong. Julian's phone rings. He looks at it. It's Dad. Answer it, I say. Put him on speaker. Julian fumbles with the phone and places it on the desk. Dad, we're at the bank. Did you get the money? Dad's voice booms through the sleek office. He sounds tired, stressed. They're threatening to take the car, boys. You said this was a done deal. Dad, Julian says, his voice cracking. We're with the CEO. It's Gianna. There is a long pause on the other end. Gianna? Dad asks, confused. My Gianna? What is she doing there? Is she cleaning the floors? I lean toward the phone. Hello, Father. Gianna? His tone shifts from confusion to anger. What the hell is going on? Why are you involved in my son's business? Put your boss on the phone. I am the boss, Dad, I say. I run the bank that holds the mortgage on your house and the lien on your son's failed company. Don't lie to me, he snaps. You expect me to believe you run an investment bank? You went to a state school. You're a girl. I am the CEO of Sterling & Vance, I repeat, letting the authority in my voice crush his skepticism. And I am currently deciding whether to foreclose on your assets or liquidate the company.
The reality finally seems to seep through the phone line. His tone changes instantly. It becomes wheedling, manipulative, the voice he used to use when he wanted Mom to sign something without reading it. "Gianna, honey," he says, "look, this is amazing news. I always knew you had it in you. I pushed you hard because I knew you could take it. Tough love, right?" I almost vomit. "You didn't push me, Dad. You abandoned me." "Family is family," he yells. "Now you listen to me. You sign whatever papers the boys have. You wipe this debt away. We are your blood. You owe us. I raised you. I put a roof over your head. And then you kicked me out from under it," I remind him. "You told me I wasn't worth the investment. You said I was a liability. I was motivating you." "No," I say softly, "you were discarding me. But here's the thing about finance, Dad. The market corrects itself. You invested everything in Julian and Marcus. You poured millions into them, and they gave you a return of 0. Actually, negative returns. Gianna, please."
Julian is crying now, actual tears. "Don't do this. I have a kid on the way. We'll lose everything." "You should have thought about that before you leased a Lamborghini on the company card," I say, flipping a page in the file. "I see the expenses here, Julian. $30,000 at a club in Miami, while you were missing payroll for your employees?" I look back at the phone. "Dad, here is the deal. I am foreclosing on J&M Heritage immediately. The brand is dead. I am seizing the inventory to recoup a fraction of the bank's losses." "No!" the brothers shout in unison. "And regarding the house," I continue. "You can't take my house, Gianna," Dad screams. "I'm an old man." "You're a man who made a bad bet," I say. "But because I am not a monster and because Mom still lives there, I won't kick you out." There is a collective sigh of relief. "However," I add, raising a finger, "I am enforcing the foreclosure. The bank now owns the house. I will buy the property from the bank personally. I will be your landlord. You will pay rent to me. If you miss a payment, you are out. And Dad, the rent will be exactly the amount you refused to pay for my tuition that first semester." "That's humiliating," Dad sputters. "That's business," I reply. "And as for you two," I look at my brothers, "you need jobs. You have no transferable skills, no work ethic, and a bankruptcy on your record." They stare at me, hopeless. "I have a friend who manages a distribution center in Queens," I say. "They need people to load trucks. Night shift, minimum wage. It's hard work, it's gritty. It's exactly what I did for 5 years while you were popping bottles." "I'm not loading trucks," Marcus yells. "I'm a fashion designer." "You were a fashion designer," I say, signing the final signature on the foreclosure document with a crisp scratch of my pen. "Now you're unemployed. Take the job or don't. I don't care, but get out of my office." I press the intercom button. "Security, please escort the former owners of J&M Heritage out of the building and send in the acquisition team." "Gianna, wait!" Julian reaches out. 2 massive security guards step in. They don't look at Julian and Marcus like they are masters of the universe. They look at them like they are trash. As they are dragged out, arguing and crying, I pick up the phone again. Dad is still on the line. "You taught me that money is the only thing that matters. You taught me that people are assets or liabilities. You made me this way." I hang up the phone. For a moment, I sit there in the silence. My heart is pounding, but my hands are steady. I turn my chair back around to face the window. The sun is setting over the city, turning the skyscrapers into pillars of gold. I open the drawer of my desk and pull out a small, crumpled piece of paper I've kept for 15 years. It's the receipt for my first semester of community college, paid for in cash with crumpled $1 bills and change from my tips. I look at the receipt. Then I look at the foreclosure documents on my desk. My father was right about one thing. Investment strategies are all about risk assessment. He bet on the wrong horses because he was blinded by tradition and ego. He thought the boys were the asset and I was the liability. But as I watch the city lights flicker on, knowing my brothers are currently on the sidewalk wondering how they're going to get home without a corporate Uber account, I realize the truth.
I wasn't the liability. I was the hedge fund. I was the volatility that destroys the weak and rewards the resilient. I pick up my pen and get back to work. After all, rent is due on the 1st, and I wouldn't want to have to evict my parents, but business is business, and I have a legacy to build, one that actually pays off. If you believe accountability matters, even when it's family, hit like on this video. Subscribe for more stories where entitlement finally meets consequences.